I have recently watched the anime Monster, and I like it. However, I think there is something that is worth discussing. And in order to discuss those things, you better watch all 74 episodes before starting this video. I'm going to talk about the plot, assuming you have seen it. And if you haven't, I'm going to spoil everything for you. So, let's start. First, I want to talk about why Monster intrigued me. Then, I'm going to provide some arguments about the limitations of monster philosophy or potential limitations of storytelling. When I say that, it doesn't mean that monster is necessarily flawed, but rather storytelling itself is not flawless. So, very early on in the anime, it has a really interesting premise. It is a premise that got lost in the later episode. This premise focuses on the debatable reality of Johan's existence. In those early episodes, it really feels like it can go both ways. Either Johan's existence is just a figment of imagination from Tenma, or Johan is a real person. These illusions of existence reminded me a lot of the quote, "The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world that he didn't exist." What's more, the idea of a devil that is right next to us, close to us, or even prompt us to do evil things made me recall the term shadow from Carl Jung. He believed that there is this thing called shadow within all of us. It is the personality that we suppress and not show to others. It lingers in our unconscious mind and will only appear on rare occasions. So the fact that we live in a modern society means a lot of the time the suppressed part is more animalistic, more wild, or more violent. In this case, Johan is that shadow that went from lingering in the dark to coming out of the unconscious, triggering others to do things that they normally would not. This explains why he knows every little memories of his victims, and he could manipulate them as his will. You can even thematically sense Johan is supposed to be this suppressed figure. Look at his design. He is blonde with blue eyes, looks clean and well-mannered, a man who was born in the West. And at one point, he even dressed up as a girl to imitate her sister. All these are the exact opposite of what Dr. Tenma represents. Someone who is brunette with brown eyes, dressed like a homeless man who was born in the East. Another reason why the anime intrigued me is how Johan desired his plan. This time it actually reminded me of some theories from Lacan. For Lacan, the idea of desire is not just that you want something. It always implies the desire for desiring itself. Put it simply, when you get an item in a video game, don't just get it and forget about it. The best item is always those that give you the desire to desire more. For example, when you finally get the paraglider in Zelda, it enables you to have other desires, like exploring places that you previously couldn't. What you want is always a desire enabler. Now, if you always desire for desire itself, then what does it sound like? It sounds like addictions or some actions that would never lead to an end. This fits the descriptions on how the anime portrays Johan. When the anime tries to answer how Johan is the evilest person to be alive, they always show it through negations instead of affirmations. You have to guess what Johan wants. What is his final plan? Matter of fact, in one instance, he changed his plan in midway without informing others. He decided, instead of hurting Hans Georg Schuwald, it would be more fun to burn the library down and let him witness the suffering. So while Johan did not want to actualize what he wanted, he is always so elusive with his plan. Why the manga creator, Naoki Urasawa, was only able to disclose it at the very end? Well, to answer that, we can once again use Lacan. Lacan had a very different understanding of anxiety compared to Freud. Freud hypothesized that we first experience anxiety when we were a child. We have it because we were separated from our caregiver, the one who made us feel safe and the one whom we desire. But Lacan reverses this notion and claims that we develop anxiety not because we got separated from what we desire, but instead, we are too close to what we desire, and therefore we develop anxiety. It is the anxiety of losing desire itself. Because one must answer, what next? What is there left for me to live for if I have everything that I've wanted? This is why Lacan imagined human always has this sense of lack, something that need to chase after. So going back to Monster, why Naoki Urasawa could never help Johan to actualize his plan.
あの時みたいに打つかい？
ええ。もうすべて終わりにするわ。
終わり？終わりってなんだろう？終わり、終わり、終わり、終わり、終わり、終わり。何度も何度も終わりの世界を見てきた。終わりってなんだろう？
終わるわ。あなたが死んで、私も死ぬ。
It is because there is no end to desire. If you have the desire to describe Johan as the scariest man alive, the image of Johan must be a phantom and never reveal itself. After all, you can always harm one more person, burn one more house down. If Johan announced early on that he wanted to cause a million deaths, then you will always ask Naoki Urasawa, why not 1,000,001? So on and so forth. Therefore, Johan's plans could only be revealed at the very end. This is where the plot runs out of story. The moment Johan is closest to what he desired. When this happened, we pull the curtain down, because at that point, Johan was no longer human. Human must have anxiety, human must have desire. Hence, in my mind, why his final goal is called a perfect suicide. So, I have been praising why Monster is so intriguing for me, but I think it is time to discuss, can we improve certain part of the story, or this is the limitations of story itself? Let me start with some small critique so that I can make a segue to my main concern. Remember how I praised the way the anime depicts Johan's plan? It is so elusive that it kept us guessing. However, depends on how you execute it, it can be a double-edged sword. The anime tries so hard to portray his grandiose plan to convince us that he's perfectly evil. But the thing is, perfections often come as a cost. It makes things detached from reality. No one is that perfect. And this would be my main topic for my small critique. The anime tries too hard to sell us the horrible image and the evil actions of Johan. It gives people the wrong idea on what does it mean to be evil. It's a phenomenon that hit especially hard for people who watch anime. Before you comment and ask why I single out anime, isn't this just anime media in general? My response is, there's a reason why there's such a term called chonibyo, which often got associations with people who engage in otaku culture. The term chonibyo, aka middle school syndrome, refers to some young teenagers who have grand illusions. They think they know it all, they hold this secret knowledge about the world. This kind of attitude is often cultivated by misreading the media that they consume, or was created exactly because of poor executions from media itself. And when I was watching Monster, it gave me a hint that the anime definitely awakened view middle school syndrome. Johan is too perfect as an evil person. The existence of Johan is so perfect that he even got called out by others, claiming that no way he's from this world.
完璧すぎるんだよ、彼は。目の見えるものにはわからんかもしれない。感じるんだよ。完全に調和の取れたものを前にすると、それがこの世に存在していないのではないか、とね。
存在していますよ、しっかりとね。
There's no way a person knows every single word that could trigger you and all your darkest secret. If you think you are someone like Johan, then you are exactly what I was talking about. But for me, the most noteworthy event from the anime is how it described Johan's final plan through comparison. There's this one occasions in the plot where we got to meet a group of extremist organization. because I don't want to get shadow banned, let's just say that they wanted to recreate what happened in Germany during the World War. The anime is trying to make us guess, was Johan going to team up with the organization? Would he do the same harm that human did 80 plus years ago? The answer is no from the anime. But the reason why Johan chose not to join up with them is due to the fact that Johan was dreaming something bigger. He was not into this foolish plan that the organizations promote. I think Tenma explained the offer intention the best.
ヨハンはお前たちの上になど座らない。ヨハンをお前たちの組織のトップに座らせることなど無理だ。彼はお前たちのような安っぽい人種差別や偏見など持ち合わせちゃいない。ヨハンは人間すべてを嘲笑っているんだ。
Now, it is kind of strange the anime chose this kind of exact wording, because what it sounds like is, even Johan, someone who is the embodiment of the devil, would not fall for such a silly belief. It somehow makes Johan's final plan sounds more noble in this way. But a killer is no better than a serial killer. It also simplifies the intention of the organizations as people who have stupid belief, and they are not worthy of examination. We should focus on this charming Johan and how he would actually do more harm to the world.
ヨハンを迎えるためのな。
ヨハンはそんなこと望んではいない。ヨハンは確かにこのフランクフルトにやってきたわ。でもあなた方のリーダーの一人とその部下を殺して去っていった。あるメッセージを残して。
メッセージ？
彼はあなた方が思っているような人間じゃない。もっと複雑な何か。
何が言いたいんだ？
もっと恐ろしい何か。彼は悲しみの淵でもがき苦しんでるのよ。
But in actuality, if you have seen the anime or read the manga, the harm that Johan did in the end, at most, would only cause 100 deaths. But the belief that the organization promotes could cause billion. Objectively speaking, in the real world, we should actually be cautious of those who are in the organization. Monster being such a mature, well-thought-out show, I expect it to do better at analyzing discriminative behavior and explain why people fall for such belief in the first place. In some sense, it is even ironic that an anime that focuses this much on the idea of evil deed would just call someone who wants to commit the most atrocious things in human history as stupid belief. Because those people in the organizations is the embodiment of Johan in the real world. By casually dismissing them, it is indirectly calling Johan's actions stupid and not worthy of examination. The worst part is, Johan and his plan could literally never happen. It is a very detached depiction of what an evil person can do. In fact, Johan's final goal is so detached from reality that the show needs to make up stuff to support the abhorrent image of Johan's final plan. Toward the final arc, Johan is planning to bring havoc into a small little town called Ruenheim, and he has a very simple plan to instigate chaos in this peaceful town. It all started with a gunshot.
銃声？
People in the town don't believe that it is a gun sound in the first place. The town is in such great harmony that no way violence will occur. So in order to bring home how scary and devious Johan's plans could be, in episode 69, Officer Heinrich launched Recoil a very interesting account. A story about how a town called Psychoanalysis fell into chaos.
この平和な町を本当に襲撃するんでしょうか。
襲撃。それ以外にも方法はある。たった一丁の銃で町が全滅した例もある。1958年、ツバイフェルシュタットだ。ニーダーザクセン州で連続殺人が起きた。自分の隣人が連続殺人鬼なのではないかと、何でもない日常の出来事にも住民はピリピリした。そんな集団ヒステリー状態の中、住民の一人が護身用に手に入れた銃で隣人を撃った。そこからはもう誰も止められなかった。 街中に火が放たれ、手元にあるものは全て武器になった。住民全員が殺し合い、生存者は一人もいなかった。
まさかこの町がそんなことに。食い止めなきゃ。そんなことが始まる前に。
いや、もうすでに始まっているかもしれない。
Soon after, launch assessment comes to fruition. That body was discovered. People started to panic. In the midst of all this, Johan just pushed the snowball a little bit more. He ordered others to give out guns. Johan and his crew were the supply, while the townsmen were demanding violence. So, all hell broke loose. When I was watching it, it immediately reminded me of an anime that came out 18 years after Monster, Lycoris Recoil. And yes, unfortunately, I need to spoil the plot a bit. Toward the end of Lycoris Recoil, a brilliant character called Matsuma thought that he could tear down the lie of the city by scattering firearms to the public. The lie here is referring to the fake peaceful image that the city maintained. There are countless crimes in the city, but you would never hear them because they all got suppressed by the secret government organization, Lycoris. So he wanted to give the general public weapons to fight and show the existence of Lycoris. But the thing is, I will never forget how the first shot happened. Soon after Matsuma announced his plan through public broadcast, a man immediately found a gun under the bench. And just so happened, a police was beside him. Instead of putting the gun down, he immediately somehow tried to stand up, but fell, which led to his gun pointing at the officer. And because of that, things went south. People got hurt and everything fell into chaos. The enemies tried to show that the general public could suddenly become violent when possessing weapons. And yet, it all started with an accident. It is ludicrous. It's almost like the anime cannot find a good reason why the general public would suddenly want to shoot someone just because a mysterious figure gave them a public speech. So they need to contrive something ridiculous to persuade the audience. Now, this is how the things began. It began with an accident, an honest mistake. They are depicting the general public as this gullible potential criminal, people who are always waiting to break loose. So, going back to Monster, it follows similar plotline. Just give people firearms, then things would become messy. But at least this time, Monster is a bit smarter. It has supporting evidence showing that this kind of mass hysteria could happen. Just look at what happened in 1958. It's not crazy that a single gun could cause that much harm. But then the thing is, if you search Zweifelstadt 1958 on the internet, nothing comes up. The story of Zweifelstadt is just a lie, a fictional event, something that Naoki Urasawa made up so that it could create the idea of Johan as this evil genius. And when I say fictional, I mean truly fictional, something that has no reference to real-life event. Technically, some suggested that the story of Zweifelstadt took reference to what happened in 1951 Bon Saint-Esprit, where the whole town went crazy. But that event occurs because of food poisoning, so I think it has nothing to do with what we are discussing here. Now, do you understand what I mean by the depictions of Johan is so perfect that it is detached from the true meaning of what an evil person is? If something which is similar to Ruhenheim could happen, then Naoki Urasawa didn't have to make things up. Honestly speaking, if he isn't such a good storyteller, the whole anime could become comical, too edgy to be believable. So now you might say, in reality, Naoki Urasawa is a good storyteller. And second, what he did could be interpreted as stylistic choice. Just like a lot of fable stories, they hold no bearing of reality, but they are still able to sell you a meaningful lesson. To that, I would say, yes, you are right. Which is why I have said that This is just my small nitpicky critique. It is just a segue to my main point. So, going back to Ruinheim, Naoki Urasawa showed that a peaceful town could just crumble if you suddenly give people weapons. And he even used a fictional incident to illustrate how this might happen. But throughout this whole anime, there is one type of person who is always holding a gun. They are holding it in the office, in the street, and have no intentions hiding the fact that they possess firearm. And yet, they don't turn violent. In fact, they could even be depicted as rational and orderly. Yes, I'm talking about those who have institutional power. The most obvious one that you can see in Monster is police. If the final plan of Johan is getting people crazy by handing them a weapon, then one must ask, why those who are always holding weapons do not disrupt the peaceful nature of society? It seems Naoki Urasawa got blindsided and didn't treat those who have institutional power as common people. It is almost hinting when normal people get power, they must bring chaos. Hence why they need to be governed. On the other hand, when institutions maintain their power, then it must be natural. It is just how things work. This idea of neglect toward institution is what I want to discuss first in this video. When I say institution, I mean a network of organization that goes beyond the individual. It could be governmental or non-governmental. And the reason why I want to dive deeper into this topic is because it goes beyond what happened in Ruinheim. It touches upon the central theme of monster philosophy. The representation of this philosophical thought is the protagonist, Dr. Tenma. Tenma has this golden rule that we encounter again and again. One should not kill no matter the situation. It is a very understandable argument that one can relate to. But there's a caveat. When Dr. Tenma represents his pacifist attitude, the idea that he represents or the problem that he tries to tackle is always hyper-individualized. It is always someone directly assaulting others for personal reason. This type of killing is always emotionally charged. But is that how death occurs every time in a society? After all, what do you think is the implications for security guard, police, and soldiers being able to possess weapons? They are trained by the institutions to hurt others, but not because they have personal affairs with them. Yet, you don't see monsters have any sort of interest in dealing with this kind of killing. It's almost like the anime can only associate killing when there is passions involved. And I need to remind you, Monster is the anime where it has a character who said these kind of things.
あなたの友達、さっき天馬って言ったわね。私の知り合いにも天馬っていう人がいるの。本当？その人も勇気のある人？ええ。でもその人に銃を撃たせちゃいけないと思った。人を殺させちゃいけないって思った。あなたも絶対人を殺したりしちゃダメよ。どんな悪いやつでも。そう。私がすることを真似しちゃダメ。
You should not kill no matter how bad the person is. The girl Nina said this speech when she was about to shoot someone. She needed to do that because the guy was trying to commit arson. So a conundrum occurs. If Monster wants to say all killing is bad, doesn't that mean I can't do it no matter the situation? What if it is self-defense? What if it is to save others? Nina at that moment stood as a philosophical truth or symbol for Urasawa. So, what would happen? Deus Ex Machina happened. Tenma showed up nowhere so that Nina could remain morally consistent while the arson crisis was dissolved. But in real life, you will not be that lucky. It seems like Urasawa also doesn't have the answer to this moral dilemma, even if it was just a fictional story. This idea of should violence be allowed when it is self-defense becomes such an urgent question that it becomes one of the climax in the story. The thing is, if we really want to push this idea of no killing to this level of scrutiny, then It should be reflected in society at an organizational level. But just like the example of Ruhenheim, the discussion is only allowed when the common people have power. What if I told you that there was a scene when killing occurred, but it didn't receive this level of detailed description? It was so briefly mentioned that you probably don't even remember who is the killer. In episode 62, the character Milan was trying to assassinate another character who did horrific things in the past. He was trying to revenge, but he failed. He got shot by the police who were providing security at the venue. So Nina need to go through all these tensions and dialogue, even though when we know she was only hurting others because she was trying to save someone, while the police can just hurt others because of sex work. It is part of their job. A job title is enough to exempt anyone from being scrutinized for killing. There is no need for any form of nuanced discussion. This creates the illusions that when institutions were given power, they would always use it correctly. They would never misjudge the situations and wrongly hurt others. And it makes people think that their existence represents the force of protection. Is this kind of claim really true? Do soldiers really exist to protect and never invade others? Technically speaking, there is one part in the story where Monster seems to touch up on this kind of topic. Richard Brown is a former police detective. It was hinted that he no longer worked as a police detective because he shot a delinquent. So it seems the anime wants to talk about what happened if someone who is part of the institutions wants to kill others. What's more interesting is that the one that he shot is a minor, so there are even more things we could dive into.
ところで子どもの権利条約40条では法律に基づき有罪が立証されるまでは無罪と推定されるとあるのはご存知ですよね。
ああ、知ってるよ。私は少年館にいたこともある。
なるほど。では37条、18歳未満の者が犯した犯罪に対して死刑及び釈放の可能性がない終身刑を課してはならないというのは、
条約のほとんどはこの国では成人も子供も関係なく当然認められた基本的な人権だ。私が彼を撃ったのは処刑なんかじゃない。酒によっての過ちだ。私は取り返しのつかないことをしてしまったと思ってる。社会的な制裁もこうして受けて。
まあまあ、ちょっと待ってください。
But this is where the hyper-individualizations of the anime comes in. Instead of focusing on the right to kill, the anime turned the discussions into how Braun is under alcoholic influence when he shot someone. So we dive into how guiltful or ashamed he was. His feeling and thought becomes the focus, instead of, the incompetence of the police department for allowing a drunk detective to be on duty. We can never see Monster talk about something that is larger than the individual. In fact, I think now is the time to even go one step further. What if you kill but not directly? Remember how I said Monster lingers on the idea of self-defense, and even in this kind of situation, it is hard for Tenma to decide what to do. I think the reason why the anime is so unwilling to give out the answer is because you might encounter what happened in episode 10. In that episode, a group of people assassinated the chairman and his or her bodyguard. The reason why they did what they did was because after the West and East Berlin were united, unemployment went up in the East. The company GWE used this chance to do whatever it wanted and force people out of their land. The anime used the word invade to show how strong the action was. Even though there aren't any more informations being provided by the anime, judging by the choice of word that the character used, it's obvious that the company used any means necessary to get rid of the resident. And I'm confident that illegal method was involved. Since the guy who was lying down is a lawyer, and the other guy is a secretary for a politician, the show is trying to imply the reason why they chose to kill is exactly because they have insider information. They could never stop GWE through legal means. The whole thing is rigged from the start. Now, can you see why in this situation, it is not hard for them to justify their action as self-defense? They are like modern-day Robin Hood. If they do not deter the actions of GWE, more and more people will become homeless and starve in the street, and some might choose to end themselves before starvation kills them. This is what I mean when I say indirect killing. It is death through a mechanical way. It is a tough question with no true answer, and monsters know this. The anime realized you might get too sympathetic to this character, so it did a little bit of writer tricks. Somehow, it needed to add the fact that when they assassinated the chairman, an innocent child was also killed, so that it can show Fuada, killing no matter the reason is always wrong. It is a segue for the character to transition from a noble cause to a shameful regret. It is a great way to obfuscate without direct confrontations, just like what happens with Nina. But one thing is clear, the anime has once again shown it has no intention to care about killing when it is done through a network of systems. Tenma never faced another company like GWE, nor did he ever condemn the actions of GWE. It's like Tenma naively thought no one would die when you systematically remove a group of community. It's only killing when you see blood. I have two theories as to why monsters completely avoid this kind of death. One is obvious. The anime was really oblivious to the power of structural surrounding. The other is the fact that it is really hard to write a good story if there is too much nuance involved. Going back to the GWE company as an example, it is understandable why someone wants the chairman dead, but they also kill the bodyguard. Do the bodyguard deserve to be killed? When you should say enough is enough. There are too many variables need to person when an institution exerts its power. So it's better to focus on a very evil person, a serial killer, someone you can clearly blame. Or else there will be too many components and too many new characters that you might as well write an essay on why killing is bad instead. And this is the limitation of story. A story must be entertaining, and in an effort to do so, it often comes at the expense of simplifications. On the other hand, if the topic is too technical, it becomes boring. So now, what if I use another way to dissect monster? Let me use what is inside the story to show the limitations of Monster's story. At the end of Monster, we have a scene of Nina and her professor. But before I get to the main gist, I have a small remark. Not sure is it the habit for Monster to hyper-individualize, or is it simply because it was an anime made by a Japanese depicting two Germans? Somehow they both agree that there is no excuse for getting bad grade. Again, everything got boils down to the determined will of the individual. Even when your parent dies and your brother is killing other people, you should still be able to get good grade. This weird focus on the individual is so omnipresent in Monster. Anyway, what I want to focus on is the intention of the scene. Nina was actually trying to be a lawyer, so she was receiving remarks from a professor. So after me ranting for this long, here we have a character whose final arc is to be part of an institution. Then it seems somewhat ironic that Monster never mentioned one of the most obvious things that they would do in court: capital punishment. It is a form of killing done by the institution for thousands of years. But there's no point in critiquing the point of institutions again. So let's get one step further and critique it with Monster's main core message. Yes, killing and destructions are bad, but what is there to live for when facing such evil? Or what can we do to prevent ourselves from hurting others? For that, there will be an answer appearing again and again in Monster. And I think the word for the answer is love.
憎悪、虚無、破壊衝動、闇に取り込まれない人間を作りたかった。どうやると思うね。
愛情。
全く新しい発見だったよ。
There's these strong affirmations toward life, knowing that there will always be someone who loves you.
お前が生まれてきたのには意味がある。お前は誰かに望まれて生まれてきたんだから。絶対誰かに望まれて、絶対に。
We always cherish our day-to-day life because there's love involved.
人間は食事をうまいと思わなければならない。休日のピクニックを楽しみにしなければいけない。仕事が終わった後のビールがうまいと思わなきゃいけない。人間は子供が死んだ時、心の底から悲しいと思わなければいけない。
This idea of love could be expanded and utilized for other forms of argument. It is therefore not surprising for Tenma to have said this. I realize that human lives have equal value. By saving you, nobody has the right to take another's life. There is a profound emphasis on valuing life itself. Life is something that you embrace and love. Now, the idea that human life has equal value should of course cover the life of prisoners too. So we have a great reason to circle back to the topic of capital punishment. Why Monster never mentioned it when Nina was trying to be a lawyer? We literally have episodes involving the inmate. Well, some of you might suggest that there is an obvious reason. It's because Germany actually abolished death sentence decades ago. Dr. Tenma was living in a period where no inmate were being killed. But I suggest we should even think a little bit further. Who is Dr. Tenma? He is a Japanese. And who made this art? A Japanese. And in Japan, they still have capital punishment. So is it possible that we might extrapolate the idea from Monster and see how Urasawa might oppose capital punishment? If no one has the right to take someone's life, then certainly the court neither can. But here's where the idea of love from Monster becomes tricky to handle. For sure, it is important to emphasize the importance of life, so that people would recognize prisoners have a life too. But is it possible that sometimes the point is no longer preaching but action? Isn't it more important to set up rules than to make sure everyone is on the same page? After all, a group of people is not an organism. The judicial system cannot feel love. The quote from Martin Luther King is the best analogy. It may be true that the law cannot make a man love me, but it can stop him from lynching me. And I think that's pretty important. I cannot see why we shouldn't apply this attitude to the current topic. But another reason why the central idea of monster philosophy requires a bit more examinations is because sometimes the real world is complicated. In the anime, Tenma was being portrayed as this opposing force to Johan. It is virtually impossible to mix their ideas together. It's like fire and water. It gives you the impression that if someone as evil as Johan were to be alive, there would be no way that he would be against the death penalty. After all, Johan is the one who literally said this.
Dr. Tenma, あなたにとって命は平等だった。だから僕は生き返った。でも、もう気づいたでしょう。誰にも平等なのは死だけだ。
But is this attitude of Tenma really the driving force for every societal progression? Remember how there is no more death sentence in Germany? Well, here's another plot twist for those who don't know. Guess why Germany abolished capital punishment? It is not because the affirming life attitude that Tenma promotes. It was literally because after World War II had ended, there were a group of people who got scared. They thought they would be executed, so they suggested the motions for abolishing death sentence. Again, don't want to get shadow banned, so let's just say that those people were friends with the party who started World War in Germany. I think you get the point. So it is the group of people who Tenma thought to be imbecile that cause Germany to have no death row. It is those who are real-life representations of Johan that quote-unquote progress the society. But enough with this conversation. Let's talk about Spider-Man. To be more specific, let's talk about the Spider-Man from 2002 starring Tobey Maguire. Spoiler, by the way. But who killed the Green Goblin at the end of the movie? You might say it's Green Goblin himself. But I would say it is you who killed the Green Goblin, the audience who saw the movie. Because near the end, before Green Goblin died, William Dafoe tried to convince Spider-Man how great he was to him, how all the horrible things that he had done was under the influence of Green Goblin. He was basically like a father to him. To that, Spider-Man replied,
I have a father. His name was Ben Parker.
The rejections in the end from Spider-Man is not just a dialogue from Tobey, but also the inner monologue for the audience. Because some will not forget the horrible things that Green Goblin had done no matter what. So here comes an awkward situation. What should Spider-Man do? Even when a hero is killed for a just cause, he might still get judged. There is a reason why Batman has a no-killing rule. So the best way to end the movie is for the villain to die due to his own action. That way, the hero does not get their hands dirty, while the audience could get the satisfying need for vengeance. But if we look closer, what was the Green Goblin actually doing at the end if he was genuine with his word? He is asking for redemption. And this idea of redemption would be a central theme in many different stories, including Monster. A lot of people did a lot of horrible things in Monster. At the same time, remember the golden rule of Tenma is no killing. So what happened if someone crossed the threshold of Tenma's golden rule? Well, at that point, they need to redeem themselves. A character redemption is a difficult thing to write. How can a show that is this adamant in condemning killing be willing to forgive someone who committed the sin? In truth, if I have not miscalculated, there will only be 4 people who admitted they have killed someone or were shown to kill someone but did not suffer any retribution. The first one is a former French soldier, Bernhard. The second one is the assassin, Rosso. The third one is the underground assassin, Kamen. And last but not least, Officer Henrik Lunge. I would consider 4 of these characters as anomalies. They are the exceptions to how Monster treat its own narrative. They kill but barely suffer. This does not mean Monster didn't go an extra mile to protect them. Bernhard, being a former soldier, obviously means he had hurt a lot of people. But the only death count that we know from him was him killing this little girl's mother. The show protected him by saying that he was acting in self-defense. Somehow, the only killing that we know from a former soldier was him acting in self-defense. In addition, his willingness to take care of the little girl offers a chance for audience to think that he has a bit of humanity in him. So we can forget he crossed the golden rule of Tenma. For Russell, if you have seen the anime, how can you not like him? His first appearance is one of the best episodes of Monster. He was set up to be this lovable guy in the first place so that we can forget he was a ruthless assassin during the plot twist. And I need to remind you, the only time we saw him doing his mission somehow would be the last and final failed mission, where he was unwilling to kill someone. For Henrik Lunge, the show depicts him hurting someone only when he was pushed to the corner. And in some sense, the anime is unwilling to let us know what did he do to the enemy. Did he just shoot him to death or handcuff him? We don't know. The next scene was something irrelevant. In fact, the anime is so unwilling to show a good character killing someone to the point where the conflict between Roberto and Henrik not being able to solve in episode 72. We will only know the fate of Roberto in episode 73, and it was implied that Lunge is responsible for Roberto's death, because all else will kill him. Need not to say, it is also easier to justify lunch killing since he's an officer. And if no one killed Roberto in the end, then I would need to add one more person to the list. Carmen is truly the most mysterious and lucky one out of them all. Being an assassin faking as a stripper, the only thing we know about her is her name. And I guess that is also the reason why she didn't suffer. She escaped all retributions because, simply, she is forgettable. So what happened to those who aren't anomalies? Well, the lightest punishment would be years in prison. The most notable one are the serial killers in episode 63. They all broke the rule of Tenma, but you should still consider them as the luckier one. Because the normal fate of those who cross Tenma rules is death. A character who killed Nina's parent and tried to redeem himself by rectifying his mistake, dead. The character who was actually likable, but in the past had accidentally killed his mother and was willing to do anything for the mafia, dead. A minor character who is a serial killer that knew Johan, dead. How about another minor character who is also a serial killer that knew Johan, dead. The two old couple got tricked by Johan into handing out guns to kill others, dead. For God's sake, even your most beloved character in the series also received a death penalty because we have concrete evidence showing him killing others. The list really goes on. Characters that I've previously mentioned in this video also suffer the same result. For an anime that focused this much on the meaning of life and was against killing this much, it surely does seem weird that it does this much of killing. Even Johan needs to suffer a questionable death before he could be reborn. The contradictions between Tenma's rule of no killing and the actual executions of the shows mimic a lot what Nietzsche said about slave morality. The term was invented when he was trying to criticize the Christian value. Just like Monster, the religion of Christianity put a lot of emphasis on love, a lot of emphasis on faith.
世界は真っ暗だ。明日は真っ黒だ。
そんなことはない。世界が真っ暗だなんて大嘘だ。
本当？
ああ、本当だ。あ、忘れてた。ほら、サッカーボール。明日はきっといい日だ。
But Nietzsche criticized the Christian attitude as a dishonest code of conduct that developed through a long line of history. He said, since Christianity was deemed as heresy by the Romans, their religion was oppressed from the very start. The most noticeable example is the crucifixions of Jesus. After all, it was Pontius Pilate, a Roman, who ordered the action. So Nietzsche believed that, because of this origin, the teaching of Christianity is embedded with values which are similar to a slave. The slave need to have faith, they need to have love, or else how could they accept the fact that they are living under such harsh conditions? So they need to invent moral code that fits their situations. This is why Christianity have the phrase like, love your enemy, love what you hate. They cannot fight the Roman, so they can only love their own suffering. This for Nietzsche is the scariest thing. They choose to suffer. The more they suffer, the stronger the faith. Because according to Christianity, if I suffer, it must be because I'm sinful. I'm sinful because I can't follow the teaching of God. I can't follow the teaching of God because I still have doubt in my faith. I have doubt in my faith, therefore God needs me to suffer to test my faith. But the Christian left a little caveat. Those who are non-believer will one day go to hell. For Nietzsche, this is a telltale sign for dishonesty. With all this talk about love and have faith in God, what they want the most is for the judgment day to come. The day when they see the enemy suffer and finally get the revenge. The day the slave took power over the master. I think this excerpt from Rick Roddick said the best.
Anyway, this is the active type. One of the faculties that the active type is noted for is the ability to forget. And this is again part of Nietzsche's ongoing polemic with what might be called mere historicism. people who just wander idly through the relics of the past in search of a cultural treasure or whatever. In other words, for Nietzsche, the active person is willing to forget. And he contrasts that with memory, which you need in Christianity in order for the redemption story, for example, to make sense. You need to remember the sufferings of the martyrs. Remember. Memory plays an entirely different role for the master morality, the way Nietzsche puts it, that they're strong enough to forget. So if insulted and you hit the master in the face, he hits you back, and that way he honors you, and then he forgets it, see? Because, first of all, if he turns the other cheek, he shames you by saying, well, you're not good enough to even fight with me. Rather, you hit him, he hits you back, and then you both forget it. It's the West Texas version of master morality. He hits you, you hit him, and then you've treated each other with dignity, you forget it, and then you forget it. But you don't turn the other cheek and then remember it. Mendaciously, remember it. Ah, yes, you hurt me now, but later. There's the secret that will come in with Christianity, the but later. Okay. Nietzsche here is discussing Christian values of love and faith, love, and hope. And I'll start with his rhetorical question. What do I hear aright? They call things the last judgment. They call things their kingdom, the kingdom of God. Meanwhile, however, until then, they live in faith, in hope, in love. In faith in what? In love of what? In hope of what? You see how this genealogy of suspicion is going to start to work now? He's going to examine that. In love of what? These weak people, someday or other, they too intend to be strong. There's no doubt in that, because someday their kingdom too shall come. They term it the kingdom of God, of course, because, after all, one is so very humble in all things.
So the thing is, with all these ideas of hope and love from Monster, it seems rather odd that the anime would be the one who is unwilling to forget the sin of others. Almost no one escaped punishment, and there's a very obvious reason. Monster knows no matter how Dr. Tenma is willing to forgive, you are unwilling to. There will always be some audience who got inspired by Tenma and loved everything he said, but deep down would be so willing to take revenge upon others. They want to take the life of the character if they ever had the chance and power. Monster knows this speed of violence is necessary to satisfy the audience, or else people might dislike the show. The tension between the audience and the creator is also what I want to discuss. Monster is definitively speaking a great show. There are a lot of lessons you can learn from the anime, but what I want to focus on is this scene again. Here is an important moment because this would mark the first time Dr. Tenma trying to kill someone. Tenma could no longer be that role model because he broke his own rule. After that, we had a scene where Tenma met Grimmer for the first time. Tenma confessed he shot and probably killed someone. After a few more story exposition, Grimmer suddenly says something which seems to address the shooting from Tenma.
Dr. Tenma. 誰だっていろんな罪を背負ってる。その罪は消えない。でも、やらなきゃいけないことがある。
This originally seems to be the answer for Tenma, someone who breaks his own rule. It is a way to answer something that Monster has been avoiding this whole time. An imperfect Tenma. Remember how I said in the very beginning, you really can't tell is Johan just the imaginations from Tenma. But as the story progresses, you can really tell Johan is a real person. But this scene right here, what it is trying to do is to weave back the things together. It is trying to suggest, what if Tenma also committed horrible mistake like some of you did? It is a radical idea, because a more poetic way to say it is, what if we have a murderer saying? This made him more grounded and easier to resonate with since he no longer was this ideal model. We all have our past, but it's definitely nothing compared to getting away with a murder. But then we find out the man he shot, Roberto, was alive. The whole speech about how we all have sin suddenly became meaningless. We said that sin will never disappear. What you need to do is just undo your murder. Simple and easy. The image of Tenma need to be so perfect that it can unkill a killing. This made me recollect something. It's a scenario proposed by a song. It's called Dance with a Devil by Immortal Technique. It's a song that I got randomly recommended to, a song that I tried to recommend to others but never really did. It's not so much of a song but more like a story. Trigger warning, by the way. I will try to provide my sanitized version of the story, but still, it's quite graphic. At the very start of the song, we get to know a guy called William. His primary concern is to make $1 million, an illest hustler that the world had never seen. He used to have sex with movie stars and take drugs in his dream. A corrupted young mind at the age of 13. He never had a father and his mother was an addict. She tried to work hard and be sober, while each year his son's heart grew colder. He started his own project and was fascinated by girls and material objects. He wanted the respect, so he built up a reputation for being able to hustle and steal. But when he got locked, he immediately squealed. His gang thought that he was not real. Now he had this need to prove he is the deal. A feeble young mind with infinite potential. Drop out and sell weed should not be on the table. He dreamed of something bigger that is full of his greed. He smoked until his own eyes bleed. He started to fight over little things and sold drugs that is more than just weed. He do that to get back the respect from the eyes of his crew. It was slowly but surely climbing up on the rank. But even hell has its own ceiling too. People at the top said, any coward can sell drugs. Anyone with a gun can kill and steal. Only the real one can stab someone until they die and stand in front of them, stare straight into their eyes. Bill realized this man was serious. Being tested is the only way to be top of the field. So he suggests sexually assaulting a woman to prove he was cold-hearted. They agreed to meet on Friday night, 2:45. They joked around until they saw a woman 3 in the morning on the way home. They followed her and wrapped her skirt around her head to knock her onto the floor. Bill then grabbed her hair and dragged her through the empty lobby. She struggled hard, but they forced her to go up the stairs. When they finally arrived at the roof, they cursed and yelled, "Shut the hell up," and stopped moving around. Bill stabbed on her face and broke her jaw. They kicked and cracked her ribs until she stopped moving. Blood was leaking through the cloth, and she cried silently. Then they proceeded to sexually assault her. Bill went first, but each took a turn. They would rip and choke her until her throat burned, while she mumbled for God with no one concerned. When they were all done, someone pulled out a gun. She told Bill she was a witness and she needed to be done. He thought about a minute she was practically dead, and so he leaned over and pulled the gun right to her head. Right before he pulled the trigger and ended her life, he thought about his future with his new brothers. Then he pulled back the skirt cover. But what he saw made him start to cringe and stutter, cause he was staring in the eyes of his own mother. She looked back at him and cried cause he had forsaken her. She cried more painfully than they were assaulting her. His whole world stopped, he couldn't even contemplate. His corruption had successfully changed his fate. He remembers how his mom used to come home late, but it turns out she worked hard for nothing, because she turned away from the woman who once given him birth. He shouted out to the sky, but only the devil responded because God wasn't there. He jumped off the roof and died with no soul. After that, they killed his mother and never spoke about it. Here again is a man who committed horrible things, but it's the teaching of Tenma a key to his salvation. Let's rewind ourselves and look at his most famous quote.
明日はきっといい日だ。
This attitude of hope in the future gives you the feeling that it is you who are against the world. You are the righteous being who never killed anyone and was being trapped by bad circumstances. But not everyone is a victim. Not everyone is Dr. Tenma. There is no better future if you are William. He single-handedly blundered so hard that there is no coming back. And there are two interesting quotes I want to talk about because of that. Remember how I said Roberto magically came back to life? It's quite ironic when you realize there's one famous quote from Tenma. Even if you forget, you cannot erase the past. Yes, we cannot erase the past, unless we are a fictional character where the writer can rewrite our scene. I just can't compute this quote with the writer's actions of undoing Roberto's death. Tenma, no matter how truthful he sounds, he would still be lying. Because the writer will always erase the past if it makes Tenma look bad. This got me thinking of another quote from Johan.
なぜ忘れようとするんですかそれとも嘘をついているんですかその嘘は他人に対してですかそれとも自分に対してですか嘘をつけばあなたの罪がなくなると思いますか
And going back to the song, aren't you curious? If William and his mom die, then why would Immortal Technique know about this incident? Who is spilling the bean? Well, if you go back to the song, we will realize I haven't finished the whole song. And here's the rest of the lyrics that I have rephrased. Listen, the story that I'm telling is true, cause I was with Billy Jacob and I assault his mom too. And now the devil follows me everywhere that I go. In fact, I'm sure he's standing among one of you at my show. He could be standing right next to you and you wouldn't know. The devil grows inside the heart of selfish and wicked. White, brown, yellow, and black. Color is not restricted. You have a self-destruction destiny when you are inflicted. So here's a song where no one is lying about their sin. But who should he follow in Monster? The one who aimed for self-destruction, or the one who never did anything wrong? And I would say this is the limitations of storytelling. A story can only help you so far. A meaning from a story can never substitute your meaning from life. So no matter how good Urasawa writing is, he's still just a human, like you and me. He doesn't have all the answer to life. The ultimate meaning must be lived through in your life. The answer to your struggle lies in living your life. And I will end here with a few lines of lyrics from Immortal Technique. Remember, devil used to be God, angels that fell from the top. So when the devil want to dance with you, you better say never, because the dance with the devil might last you forever. That's the end of the video. Please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. Bye.